Alright, so Harry Potter, James Bond, Lord of the Rings, these are all very famous film franchises. They're pretty much household names, you'll never meet someone who doesn't know any of them in America, most likely. And I want to mention these three because, they're very famous movies, but, everyone knows that they're adapted from books originally. Harry Potter's been around for at least a decade, before the movie started. Lord of the Rings is from, last century. And so today I want to explore for you the option for reading for pleasure instead of as an obligation. So everyone here does reading as an assignment. We all have classes where we get assigned reading. And, it doesn't matter what class you are, a science class, a social science class, a math class. You have a textbook. You're expected to read some pages out of it, and that it's not a bad thing, but it's just something that I think has caused a problem for our generation as readers. So I read a lot. I have ever since I was a child. I love to read whatever I can get my hands on. I read same books as you did probably. Captain Underpants, Goosebumps. I also love Encyclopedia Brown, and not just books but comic books. I read Garfield. I read Calvin and Hobbes. So I just love reading for pleasure. It's one of my favorite hobbies of all time. So the reason I chose this topic is because that I believe that America has been in its decline in regards to reading lately. The National Endowment of the Arts, a group focused on the arts sponsored by the federal government, did a survey, and they determined that over time, the percentage of readers in America has been declining, and in the past decade alone, that rate has at least doubled or perhaps even tripled. So the chairman of the National Endowment of the Arts, Dana Gioia, calls this a national crisis. The decline in reading among every segment of the adult population reflects a general collapse in advanced literacy. To lose its human capacity and all its diverse benefits impoverishes both cultural and civic life. I really agree with this quote. I think reading is a very important part of our culture, not just our classics, but how reading benefits us in our younger years and even in our older years. Okay. So the Jenkins Group, a respected publishing group for private books, also did a survey, and they determined that 1/3 of high school graduates stop reading books after they leave high school. 1/3 of all high school graduates will just stop reading. And I believe it's because, after 12 years of being forced to read something that they don't necessarily want to read, they think, I'm done with reading. It's been a chore for the past 12 years. I can just throw it out the window. And I hate that concept, that reading is an obligation, it's a chore, instead of something to be enjoyed. So I believe it's because students are limited to their chosen field of reading. You have to read biology, you have to read history, and as a student you have to learn those subjects, but as a person on your own free time, you're free to read whatever you want. If you love Star Wars, there are dozens of Star Wars books that have been published over the past decades. Star Wars came out in the maybe 60s, 70s, I'm not too sure, but ever since then, books have just been published like crazy and people love reading them. And so that habit of publishing movies from written material, if you look at movie theaters today, you see The Great Gatsby, a classic American book. And you see Iron Man 3, which was adapted from comic books that have been around for all decades as well. And, it blows my mind that when people love these movies, they love Gatsby, they love Iron Man, they think it's the greatest movie ever. And then they also know that there are comic books about Iron Man, for decades. And they never even consider, the thought of reading them. Because, they just consider reading to be some kind of chore that doesn't really bring any personal enjoyment. And I think it's a big problem for our generation and for future generations. I believe that reading is a very important aspect of our nation, and not just because it makes us more knowledgeable, but because it also leads to many benefits that help us improve in our academic life and in our personal lives as well. So I consider reading to be a very beneficial activity to take part in. It's not just something you enjoy; it's something that helps you. So Peggy Gisler and Marge Eberts are teachers and published writers about this subject for over 20 years now, and they agree that students that read more tend to just do better at school. And they say reading builds knowledge, it builds vocabulary and creativity. And whenever you read a textbook, you have to be able to understand what you're reading. Whenever you write a paper for any class, you have to be able to get your point across as simply as possible, but also in a way that has the most impact. You have to make sure you work on your syntax and your diction, your vocabulary, and just for standardized tests too. We've all been to high school. We've all taken a standard test at the end of the year, where you go to maybe the cafeteria, you get one of those little fill in the multiple choice booklets that everyone gets, and a lot of that is just reading. A lot of that's reading comprehension, your writing skills. The SAT is probably one of the most important tests that we take in high school, and out of the 3 parts, math, writing, and reading comprehension, 2 of them are very important, just to be able to read and understand what you're reading. Okay, and reading also helps build concentration and focus. Dana Gioia, the head of the NEA, says, reading develops a capacity for focused attention and imagination growth that enriches both private and public life. So, as I said earlier, it helps you in your academic life and outside of it. And I really agree with the statement that it helps you in all aspects of your life. So, reading is also very good for stimulating your brain. You need to work out your brain as well as your muscles. You need to make sure that your brain is not stagnating, that it's being active. And books are a much more stimulating form of entertainment than, say, TV or movies. So, Marianne Wolf, the director of the Center of Reading and Language Research at Tufts University, says, reading gives you a pause button for comprehension and insight. So you can read at your own pace. You can, you don't have to just keep going. You're able to stop when you want to stop and really think about what you just read. This is in contrast to movies and TV where you have to be force-fed a stream of information that you can't really comprehend. So I hope that I've managed to convince you to see reading as an activity to be enjoyed rather than endured. I talked about how there's a decline in reading in America, the main reason why I think it's declining, and if you do decide to start reading more, the benefits that you will be offered. And I love to read. Sometimes after school, I go down on Chapman, maybe 10 minutes. I go to the Barnes and Nobles. I grab a comic book or a magazine. I just sit down and I read for hours, and I really enjoy it. So I want to end this with a quote from a very famous and renowned author, Mr. Geisel, but you guys probably know him better as Dr. Seuss. The more that you read, the more things that you will know, and the more that you learn, the more places that you will go. Thank you.
Jose, what did you think?
Jason, you have a good intro. It was kind of, I got confused a little bit, but then you got back to the point. And you got good quotes and citations, especially the last quote, how you closed the speech. I liked it. It really related to me because I used to love reading Dr. Seuss books when I was little. I think a lot of people did here too. You were playing with your car slots, but it distracted me a little bit because you were playing with your hands, and when you dropped them too. But you weren't really reading off them except when you read the quotes, so it was good too. So you got a good presentation, and you were looking around a little bit. You just stayed in one place, so I guess it wasn't really that distracting. And overall, you did pretty good. So, yeah.
All right. Well, there's some things about the introduction that I really liked. I thought that it was a good attention device that you had, and you pull us in pretty effectively. I don't really notice much of a preview, though, in that opening section, and I think that becomes problematic in the body of the speech also because I don't really detect a very specific organizational pattern. There's good information in the speech, and it builds pretty well, but it would be easier to recall and probably build even more effectively if there was some discernible pattern that we could follow, and I just didn't feel like that was as distinctive as it needed to be. Listening to it, it is kind of a problem solution with a little bit of the motivated sequence sort of thing stuck in there also, but it needs to be something that's plotted a lot more. I did think that you did an excellent job citing material in the speech. You had some good quotes and statistics that you put in. The personal elements help a great deal, although you kind of undermine your credibility when you were so uncertain as to when Star Wars started. What the heck? How can anybody be that uncertain about those kinds of things? You know, the enthusiasm in your voice, I think that really, you've got good energy there. That works really well. And your eye contact's very solid. Your gestures are limited because of the notes in your hands, and you sometimes are twisting the notes around, and that's really the drawback, is that the way you use the notes isn't just that they're in your hands for you to make reference to. They are your anxiety crutch. You know, you're either shifting them or twisting them or folding them over, and that just becomes where all the nervous energy comes out. So and when you dropped it, that happens. That wasn't a big deal. But what was noticeable is the way that you handled the cards most of the time, and maybe the reason that you dropped them is because you were doing those kinds of things. I wasn't paying that much attention when it fell. You could run the tape back. You can look back at the video. There is no tape. You could look back at the video and see what was going on at that time. All right. And oh, by the way, I like the exit too. I thought the exit was well planned. I like the quote there at the end. That worked really well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.